I've been asking several chats about several people who my top 3 is right now. Who do you think would be good for my team? So I asked the fellas last week. We were supposed to announce this last week, but actually I think this is a good time for us to talk about it because we have seen Jalen Murrow become a little human now. You know, he's not as super powered. Is our opinions still the same as they were before? Now, ask all the guys, and then of course we're gonna give you the ECG roll up too. So here's what the graphic looks like. I'm gonna take this off screen. Our top 3 for ECG: Jalen Murrow was number 1, Curtis Rourke is number 2, and Dillon Gabriel was number 3. Take it or leave it. This is where we landed with it. And a lot of you are probably asking, who the hell is Curtis Rourke? Well, if you don't know who Curtis Rourke is, let us introduce you to the guy where him and his brother both played at Ohio. I believe they're from Canada, if I remember right.
Oakville, Ontario.
Yep. Say the damn. I'm good. All right. I thought I read that somewhere like a year ago.
Yep.
But
Oakville, Ontario.
Yeah, a Canadian guy, right? You know, a little closer to home, playing in Indiana, but they started their careers at Ohio. You know, he was good up there, had a couple of injuries that kind of forced him out. Then he decided to enter.
Want to be by home then.
Forced him out to go to Indiana in the transfer portal. And right now, dude is absolutely balling out. 1,700 yards on the season, 1,752 to be exact, which he is like number 5 in the country. 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and he is top 5 at number 4 and quarterback rating with 192.1. The only people that are better are Jackson Dart, Arch Manning, Jalen Milroe, and a little that we've seen behind Cam Rising. He has the highest one at 241, but he only played 1 game basically. So, but or 2 games, but he has 7 touchdowns and no interceptions and just 1 sack. Curtis Rourke is awesome, man. If you've ever seen him play football, you'll know one thing about him is that very poised in the pocket, is mobile enough to get to the outside and dump it downfield. He navigates really, really well. He processes really, really well. And there's a reason why this dude made our top 3, right? Jalen Milroe, of course. If you guys want to go ahead and spew about it. Actually, we'll let Source spew about Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, so I mean, again, yes, he had obviously the game against Vanderbilt, but as I mentioned earlier, you can't, that pick 6, again, you can't really blame that on him. He rolled out, he threw it, and just it hit the receiver, it popped out of the receiver's hands, and then just a second DB was there to catch it. That's just good awareness by the DB. There's nothing that you can do against that. Yes, he had the strip sack as well, but again, that offense is what kept him in the game, or kept Alabama in the game. I'm trying to see if I can find it. So, right here, there was a tweet out that it's pretty insane that Alabama's offense scored 35 points in just 46 plays in less than 18 minutes of possession. An all-time defensive letdown. And that's what it was. It was an all-time defensive letdown. You're telling me in 18 minutes that the offense can score 35 points in just 46 plays and not even have 18 minutes of a 60-minute game? That is absolutely on your defense for letting you down. He still only has 2 interceptions. He has 4 turnovers in total. He only had 2 total turnovers in the first 4 games and then 2 in this previous game. Is that, the high of beating Georgia? Perhaps. But again, you got to look at what the defense just being a major letdown. I mean, you had, I'm trying to remember, I think it was 13 or whatever, through his mouthpiece, chucked it across the field as time was winding down because he was frustrated. Again, that is all on the defense. Dude still has 11 touchdowns. Dude is still 8th in QBR. So far a 201 rating and 73% completion. If you don't think that he's not going to have a bounce back game next week, I don't know what else to tell you. Again, Jalen Milroe still is one of the top quarterbacks. He's still in the Heisman race. I don't care about the Vanderbilt game. You can't blame it all on him.
Facts.
Yeah.
I just went through all of that for I don't know why. I know Dillon Gabriel was on some of our list. Sora still has him on there. Tony still has him. I think this is really the game where Dillon Gabriel can solidify himself in my top 3 from here on out. And I'm not even asking for a win out of him against Ohio State. I'm just asking him to clean up the mistakes he made last game. I understand the first interception he threw. The second one was uncalled for. But if you've seen anything out of Dillon Gabriel in his career is whenever he has a bad game, he responds with, you know, the fury of the gods behind him. Like he goes absolutely insane the rest of the season. So, and every quarterback every quarterback kind of needs that. They kind of need a kick in the ass, and you know that's how he rolls. Now let's just go through our top 5. So I'll start with mine. Of course, I got Curtis Rourke at my number 1. I have Will Rogers at my number 2. Look, beating Michigan is, and their defense is a hard thing to do. Let's not act like, you know, Michigan hasn't taken a step back offensively, but defensively, they still got it, right? The dude walked out of there with just 1 pick and putting the team on his back. He has one of the best completion percentages in the country right now, only thrown 1 interception on the full season. And, you know, unlike popular belief, a couple years ago, I got made fun of for saying Will Rogers was actually a pretty good quarterback. We watched the film. I broke it down with you guys, and a lot of people changed their opinions on what Will Rogers could be. A lot of people were saying, oh, he throws 50 times a game. Of course he's going to be forced to be good in that Mike Leach offense. Michigan State as a whole, or Mississippi State as a whole last year was just total butt cheeks. And being under Jedd Fisch, of course we had our reservations there, but Jedd Fisch does really, really well with quarterbacks, and we shouldn't have expected anything less. And he doesn't have the weapons there. Like, you know, just imagine if, you know, Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan and what's his name?
Rome
Odunze was still there.
Imagine Kamara, DK, Wallace Badger, Trey Wilson.
Tyler Shug, man. I know I've been calling him Tyler Shug, but it's actually pronounced Shug. So Tyler Shug, I've been harping on this dude since he was at Texas Tech, man. Great quarterback. He's probably my favorite to watch out of all of them because you just don't know what you're going to get with him from week to week. Sometimes he can roll out and make a good pass. I think he utilizes the field better than any quarterback in the country. He understands what he has at receivers at all points of the field. And literally, he's been putting his team on his back, too. A lot of these games have come out to him and, you know, just trying to get them downfield. Of course, it came up short last week, came up short against Notre Dame the previous week. And their schedule's not going to get any easier. But I think people are still counting them out from having a berth with the ACC championship for sure, which is kind of crazy. But I definitely have Tyler Shug as my number 3 right now. And that's this list moved a little bit because I had Jalen Milroe in there last week. May I sprinkled a little bit of Dillon Gabriel in there the previous week, but this is where it stands right now. If you ask me who's my top 3. Khalid, look at your list, man.
Oh yeah. I had a little bit of a shakeup here. I'll just start, you know, you touched on Curtis Rourke. I want to point out that as talented as he was at Ohio, now that he's made the switch, there's a lot of change going on in Bloomington this year for Indiana. They have not scored less than 40 points so far this season. Like that's crazy at this point, right? Like to be able to score that much week in and week out, 77, 42, 52, 42, 42. All wins. 3 of them are Big Ten wins, right?
Yep.
So he's played very well. 4 out of those 5 games, not a single interception. So generally he protects the football. And yeah, he's got to be a household name. He's got to get a look in the NFL draft. He has to. I did have him move into my top 3 this week. He replaced Quinn Ewers, who I know that availability is important. Ewers got hurt, and I had him in my top 3. But after Rourke did what he did to Northwestern, which traditionally Northwestern has really good defenses, the way Rourke dissected them, can't ignore that. Had to put him in at 3. The second guy, Eli Holstein, he is someone that I also think needs to get more recognition. This is a guy who's a redshirt freshman, transferred from Alabama, was originally committed to Texas A&M, and is now the starting quarterback at Pittsburgh, one of 2 undefeated teams in the ACC. The other one being Miami, right? Who arguably should not be undefeated. Pittsburgh has a lot to thank Holstein for, along with Desmond Reed, their running back. But Holstein has been incredible for them. Over 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, right? 63 QBR. And just watching him play, because again, I watch for fantasy football purposes, but that's besides the point. Pittsburgh, the way that they play with him in there, it's really cool because you get to see this guy who's he's 6'4", 220, but he can move. Like he gets out there and he's tallied 3 touchdowns already on the ground, all of them coming in the last couple of weeks. Over 300 yards. He had 110 yards against Youngstown State, which, however you feel about the quality of opponent, still he reached the century mark, averaging 8 yards per attempt on the ground. So he's got wheels. He's able to scramble, make things happen with his legs. But I really do like his timing on a lot of the intermediate routes. That's where he thrives, is that 10 to 20 yards downfield. I really like his game, and he's someone, he hasn't lost so far this year. I don't really have any knocks on him other than, a few of these shorter routes, like some quick outs. That's where he's thrown a couple of his interceptions. But really, I mean, he's played great. He is fought back to win against both Cincinnati and West Virginia, right? So he's got that extra gear late in games when it's close or when behind, to be able to turn things up and go get a win. And I really like what he brings to the table, and has great size, arm talent, and redshirt freshman. So he's got a lot of growing he still can do in terms of his game, which makes me even more excited for him. But right now, I do think he's playing like a top 3 quarterback in the country. And then Jalen Milroe, I considered moving him down, but I didn't want to move him down after 1 game. I know that loss stings. You should not be losing to Vanderbilt if you're in Alabama, even if Vanderbilt isn't the typical Vandy, right?
Right.
Diego Pavia, great player. He beat Auburn last year in Jordan-Hare Stadium by 21 points. He defends his new home turf and takes down the #1 team in the country, right? I got to give them credit, but I'm not holding that loss solely on Jalen Milroe, even though, he had that interception. He had that fumble where he just didn't sense that pressure coming in from his right. Those aren't things you want to see, but if I still would take him over any quarterback in the country at this point for what he offers as a passer. He's grown so much this year. And his ability as a runner, it's hard to bet against him, even if he had 1 bad game, right? Even though he has a loss, while some of these other guys, may not yet. So, I feel strongly still about Milroe being my top guy, even though there was a little bit of hesitation in me at first. But I really do think that Jalen Milroe, I would pick him out of any quarterback in the country to lead my team.
Yeah, he did take kind of a spill there, last week, but that was a trap game out of all trap games, and a lot of us should have saw that coming with the victory that they had over Virginia Tech the first week too. And crazy things happen. Vanderbilt and Purdue are the teams that are known to upset teams every once in a while, and I don't know why we just overlooked them just because they're one of the smart schools, But
yeah.
Sora, get it to yours, man. I know we went and we talked a little bit about all these guys and cross-pollinated, but These are your
Yeah,
three.
I mean, it's pretty much. I already had my spiel on Jalen Milroe again. The first 4 games, he had 2 turnovers. This game against Vanderbilt, as I don't want to keep sounding like a broken record. Just all-time bad defense by Alabama. You're maybe looking at the high of beating Georgia. Vanderbilt, they're not that bad of a team. As weird as it is to say, knowing how Vanderbilt has been in the past. But I can't lower Jalen Milroe after 2 bad turnovers, one of which I can't really blame him on. Yes, it resulted in a pick 6, but that's all on the receiver. That one you just got to bring down. You can't allow the ball to pop up in the air for a DB to grab it, especially when it's to the outside and it's just you and the defender. Dillon Gabriel, as we mentioned before, even if it's not a win for Oregon, it would, that'd be nice. But if it's not a win for Oregon, he usually does have a bounce back game immediately after a bad game. We've seen that happen for many of quarterbacks. We can even say that might happen for like Jalen Milroe, or even after when Jalen Milroe got benched for that one game and came back in against USF and then took the rest of the season and brought Alabama to an SEC championship and natty. So, quarterbacks are going to have bad games. It's how you respond. Dillon Gabriel has been known to respond to bad games. I don't think we can really knock him down there. And then again, Curtis Rourke, if anybody was talking about Ohio, it was because of Curtis Rourke. Now a lot of people are talking about Indiana because of Curtis Rourke. Dude's got almost 2,000 passing yards, 1,752 passing yards, 14 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, and is second in the nation with a 91.9 QBR. You can't really, discredit the kid. And I already know we're going to get, the stuff of like, oh, he's a 6th-year senior or something like that, like a Bo Nix or whatever. But it's like, who cares at this point? Who cares if he's a 6th-year senior? Because some of y'all people that were saying was too old, like, oh, he's going to be too old, like was what y'all said with Bo Nix, wouldn't say the same thing for like a Jaden Daniels. So I don't give a damn about his age or that he's a 6th-year senior. Sometimes it takes a little bit, and Curtis Rourke has figured it out. Again, put Ohio Bobcats on the map. That's the reason why. Well, not on the map, but like if anybody was talking about Ohio Bobcats, it was because of Curtis Rourke. And now the same thing is happening for Indiana.
True. Anybody's list up here surprises you? Because we know Don's are based off of stats, so his makes sense. But does anybody?
I guess. The only thing that really does surprise me, it's not like a particular list, but Dillon Gabriel at the top for Tony. I know that Sora, you have him at 2.
Yeah, and I could probably switch out or switch like Curtis, and I could probably switch Curtis and Dillon, because I had this list before Saturday's game, so yeah, I could switch Curtis and Dillon easily. I wouldn't bat like an eyelash at that. This was before Saturday's game.
Yeah,
and again, even after beating Michigan, I could add Will Rogers over Dillon Gabriel. I completely agree with what Dante was saying with Will Rogers.
I feel you. I guess for me, I struggle to see Gabriel as the number 1, right? Like, 2 or 3, yeah. Like, especially, we'll really know where Gabriel is at after this weekend, right? But I guess I haven't seen enough bad from Milroe to outweigh what he's done compared to Gabriel to this point.
Yeah. Well, things are surprising, and it is what it is, but that was the list that we had. And I know a lot of people ask, who's your top guys right now? This is always subject to change, and I'm sure this list is going to look completely different by the time that we start getting into
every week. This list can change like that.
I think we've been pretty consistent with the Jalen Milroe thing, though. Curtis Rourke, we've been talking about him the last couple of weeks a lot. And, I've been on the Tyler Shug train since the beginning of the season. I would say I have not let up on that. Dillon Gabriel is the one is the
I
only
would
one
say
that's
Will
dropped off of our list.
Rogers, you know, we've talked about, but slowly he's gained a bit more traction. It just took more time for him this season.
I just needed to see it. He's on a brand new team. I didn't doubt his
brand
abilities.
New team, brand new coach, brand new, like everything that is going on in Washington right now is completely brand new than from what last year is, with weapons, quarterback, coach, coordinators, all that stuff. So it's completely brand new. So you know, it made sense of why it took, you know, a bit longer for that entire team to start clicking, and you know, because of Will Rogers clicking.
I got made fun of because I made this graphic. Y'all remember this?
I do remember this.
I got made fun of, and now ain't nobody laughing now.
I think that was when we thought that he was going to be at the Senior Bowl last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought he was coming out, but
yeah, I think that's, you were like, I'm gonna show him this.
Oh, here's this. You want to see Sora cry real quick? You ready?
Oh, I already knew what it was the second I saw it. We didn't even think of showing him that. We should have.
Yeah, use this in your campaign, 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝗀𝘀𝗀𝘂.
Yeah. Well, now we got to edit the damn Rolex on his wrist, though.
I gotta add one thing about Will Rogers. Back in 2021, right? Texas A&M was ranked 15th in the country, and they went on the road into Starkville to play Mississippi State. That week, Will Rogers tossed for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Upset A&M 26-22. The funny thing about that game was after A&M hit this all-time low, how did they lose to Mississippi State? A&M dropped out of the rankings the next week, beat Alabama at home that year. So Will Rogers, very familiar with them. He's a baller, right? You can give credit to Mike Leach in that offense.
Basically,
you can give credit to Jedd Fisch right now, but no matter where he goes and who he plays, right? You always have a shot with Will Rogers. So
straight up, let him know.